afternoon highlighted the need for an immediate change in the law to stop the full trade of trophy hunting imports. And it's fantastic to see so many members of both houses, all political persuasions, here this afternoon. I have to say there was a time as a Conservative backbench MP where I felt quite lonely sometimes talking about animal welfare issues. I have to say that I think there's been such an enormous shift in attitude towards animal welfare issues now that I don't feel so lonely and you have to fight in order to be able to host events like this. So it's an enormous privilege to be asked this afternoon to be able to host this event. Now, I was pleased actually to recently submit my first early day motion in 5 years on an issue that is close to my heart, and it's got overwhelming public support. It's been well supported by colleagues already. If you're a colleague in here who signs early day motions, then please do feel free to sign it today. I think this is a way of adding increased pressure on the government to not just listen, but to act about concerns. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the charities and the organisations, many of whom are in here today, that work tirelessly to protect our endangered species. I don't want to there's so many people here that if I do mention individual organisations, I feel like I will end up getting into trouble with those I don't mention. But you all know who you are, and you all know how brilliantly you've done in securing signatures for the petition that talks about banning trophy hunting. I do not believe that it has to be said again that there is overwhelming public support for a change in the law. Now, I try really hard, whenever possible, not to mention the B word, but Brexit does provide us with an opportunity to make sure that Britain has the best animal welfare standards in the world, and we should be leading on those standards, and I'm convinced that other countries will soon follow our example on this. Zach, our Minister, has always been brilliant when it comes to this issue. I know that he is coming, he's on his way to come to speak to you, and hopefully he will be able to give a very strong message and a very strong indication of direction that the government is taking. Now, there are many speakers, so I will shush, but it is an enormous pleasure and privilege to be able to host this today, and I'm handing over to Eduardo, who will say something more profound than me. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tracy, and for hosting this event as well as putting down the EDM. In fact, Tracy, you've been a very strong voice for animals in Parliament for many years. You're held in very great esteem by animal advocacy groups, and I thank you for all your work as well as for today. We have some very distinguished people here today. I'm just going to point out one or two. And Sir Ranulph Fiennes being one, Peter Egan being the other. They have been with the campaign to ban trophy hunting literally from day one, in fact before we even got going as a charity. And Vicky Michelle, Jan Leeming, they have been very strong voices and very good at nabbing MPs and bullying them very nicely and in the charming way that they do so naturally. And thank you, because really I think that we would not be here today. We probably wouldn't have a campaign to ban trophy hunting if it wasn't for all your work and support for us, so thank you for that. And we have some very distinguished members of the media here today as well, and I do want to give a shout out to our colleagues in the press, because they've been reporting this issue like there's no tomorrow. And rightly so, because this is an issue of very great importance to the British public. 86% of people in Britain want all trophy hunting banned, and they have spoken for the people, and it's amazing that we've seen, if you like, every single title in the British media has gotten behind this issue. We have many of our NGO partners here today. I'll very quick name check for some of them: Animal Aid, Animal Defenders International, Born Free, Four Paws, Humane Society, Lion Aid, One Kind, RSPCA, Voice for Lions, World Animal Protection, Zimbabwe Elephant Foundation. I probably missed a few, but there are so many of us working together in collaboration. It's been a fantastic campaign on that basis, so thank you, all of you, all of the above, for everything that you've done in getting us to where we are. And of course, parliamentarians. This has and is a cross-party issue. Let's make no doubt about this. When EDM 1829 was put down in the last session, 178 MPs from 8 different political parties, including 5 Westminster leaders, put their names to it. And although Tracy's EDM has only just gone down, we've already got MPs from 7 parties who've put their names to it. And a few months ago, we had a debate in Westminster Hall, a few doors down. Luke Pollard was one of the speakers there. We had this extraordinary situation of MPs of all different parties violently and furiously agreeing with one another. What a wonderful sight to behold. So, those MPs who do and can sign EDMs, we do have a copy of Tracy's EDM here. You can sign it and we can arrange for it to be tabled, or you can take it yourself. But please do sign it. We want to send a really loud message. This is something that the whole of Parliament, MPs of all stripes and colours, are firmly behind, because essentially this is what the public in Britain want today. You're going to hear from some experts about the impact of trophy hunting on endangered species and on local communities. You're going to hear some wonderful public figures who are going to be talking about why Britain should take a lead on this issue. You're probably also going to be lobbied at some point, if you haven't already been, by representatives and supporters of the trophy hunting community. And they're going to tell you things like, oh, it's well managed, it's sustainable, it provides lots of jobs for people, it is something that isn't that great a threat to species, and in fact it could even support conservation, and so on and so forth. Well, we've just handed in a 200-page dossier of evidence to DEFRA as part of the consultation, in which I think it's fair to say we respectfully beg to differ. And we say a number of things, including that the trend is upwards here in Britain. So there's actually 12 times as many trophies coming into the country as there were in the 1980s, when CITES came into force. It shows that a fast growing number of captive bred animals are being shot by British hunters. And we're not just talking about lions, we're talking about leopards, we're talking about zebras, we're talking about monkeys. There's even cases of canned bears and rhinos coming into Britain. And we show that foreign hunters are jetting into Britain to shoot a species of deer that's classed as extinct in the wild, like IUCN, and they're even coming to shoot buzzards and owls and other birds as well. And trophy hunting is often a front for poaching and for wildlife trafficking. You look at the data and you can see that hundreds of trophies and horns of rhinos are being taken by so-called trophy hunters. You're seeing the same with crocodile skins. Sometimes thousands of crocodile skins are being taken in very precise numbers, batches of 500, 1,000, 2,000. You're seeing the same with bears as well, and where bears are being shot by Chinese hunters for their gallbladders and then going into the Asian market. And this is happening because the law as it stands today allows trophy hunters to get away with it. They are posed as trophy hunters, exploiting a law in CITES which lets trophy hunters shoot the most endangered species on the planet in some cases. And we also show that hunting trophies are being traded in animals you would not expect, including whales, dolphins, chimpanzees, and even endangered parrots. So when trophy hunting advocates tell you that it's good for conservation, you might want to ask them, why then do scientists say that the species of lion, its gene pool, has shrunk by 15% over the last century as a result of persecution, and that there are now so few left that taking just 5% of the remaining adult males may be enough to push them over the brink? You might want to ask them, why is it that scientists say that elephant tusks are shrinking? They're now about a third shorter than they were a generation ago, and you've got many more tuskless elephants that are being born now. And what that is an indicator of a weakening gene pool, which means they're going to be less able to adapt and to survive to drought and to disease, especially in a changing climate. And you can tell them that trophy hunters killed 20 million animals in Africa alone over the past century, and that they were responsible for the extinction of the quagga, the bluebot, local extinctions of the Dorcas gazelle and the Nubian bustard, and that they continued, in some cases right up to the 1990s, to shoot in large numbers scimitar-horned oryxes, addaxes, and Dharma gazelles. Now, the scimitar-horned oryx is today extinct in the wild. There are as few as 100 Dharma gazelles and perhaps just 30 addaxes. And when trophy hunters tell you that it's sustainable, and they'll say, well, shooting 100 cheetahs a year, that's not very much, is it? Okay, well, when there's a population of fewer than 7,000 cheetahs remaining in the wild, shooting 100 cheetahs just for fun is the equivalent in human terms of killing every year the entire population of every single capital city in Europe, of some of the world's largest cities, including Tokyo, New Delhi, New York, Beijing, and of every resident in every major British city, every year. When they tell you that it's well managed, ask them about how in Zimbabwe the government handed out permits for trophy hunters to shoot elephants in order to raise money to build a football stadium. When they say it helps to stop poachers, ask them about the rhinos that were wiped out in Mozambique when they promoted trophy hunting to stop traffickers. And when they say it's no big deal, ask them if they've read the US congressional report, which shows that today the combined rate of trophy hunting and poaching is greater than the annual birth rate of the African elephant. But perhaps the most important question that needs to be asked, and that we ourselves as a society should be asking, is why is it still lawful to kill living, sentient, intelligent beings just so that some people who enjoy the thrill of killing can boast about their prowess? Scientists have established beyond doubt that animals feel fear, they feel pain, and they feel loss. Yet the industry is now promoting new awards in which it encourages hunters to shoot animals in new and novel ways, including lions and elephants using bows and arrows and handguns. As many as half of the animals that are shot by trophy hunters in some places aren't in fact killed outright. They end up being wounded, and the hunter then loses them. And so the animals then die a long, slow, painful death through sepsis and infection. And we document some of these instances in our submission, including a harrowing tale of a leopard that took 3 days to die. When an issue unites Liam Gallagher on the one hand, the father of the Prime Minister on the other, the readers of the Daily Mail and the Daily Mirror, the Catholic Church of England and Wales, and the inventor of the internet, surely that tells us it's game over for trophy hunting. This year, 2020, marks the 5th anniversary of the killing of Cecil the lion. Let's also make it the year that we ban this wicked sport from Britain, that we stop people bringing back these sick souvenirs, and that Britain takes the lead on the international stage and helps abolish trophy hunting once and for all. Thank you. So my brief introductory remarks dispensed with, let's move on to the people who've actually come here to listen to speak. And our first speaker, he's described by the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's greatest living explorer. I think he's even greater than that. He is one of Britain's most revered public figures. We're very honoured to have him here and to have him as a supporter. Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Ranulph Fiennes.
Thank you, Eduardo, and thank you everybody here who is doing something for this cause. Africa does hold a special place in my heart. It's where I grew up, and I learnt about the wonder of nature. But it is also where the British Empire tragically unleashed the plague of persecuting animals purely for pleasure, which has wrought such devastating damage, as Eduardo neatly summed up. Trophy hunters continue to travel to Africa to plunder what remains of the populations of some of the greatest animals ever to walk the planet. But trophy hunting is not just an African problem. As we shall hear today, North America sees thousands of black, grizzly, and my special, polar bears killed for so-called sport every year. Trophy hunting is a problem for all of us. Humans everywhere share an extraordinary natural heritage. It is therefore the responsibility of all of us to care for it. Britain may have played a major role in the crisis faced by wildlife today. We can certainly play a leading role in developing and implementing sound scientific solutions. We need to start by doing what David Attenborough once told us, namely, to step back and remember we have no greater right to be here at all than any other animal. Wildlife is not a resource that we can exploit with no regard for its well-being. As long as we continue to kill animals solely for entertainment, we cannot call ourselves a civilized society. We debase ourselves when we consciously ignore the pain and suffering that we inflict and then give weasel-worded justifications for what is plainly wrong and immoral. We are the planet's most powerful species. That places upon us a special responsibility to treat all living things with respect. Laws that permit inflicting injury and death upon a defenseless creature makes us complicit in barbarism. Until we rid ourselves of them, we have no right to call ourselves Homo sapiens. Andrew Loveridge, the Oxford University scientist who radio-collared and monitored Cecil the lion, recently wrote the following: "As a civilization that has the ingenuity to put people and machines into space and split the atom, surely we can think of a better way to save the animals that we love besides killing them. It is my mission to hand over the baton to the next generation, with these laws consigned firmly and permanently to the dustbin of history. It is therefore with great pride and pleasure that today I hand over the baton to my 13-year-old daughter Elizabeth, who will tell us why we must act now to stop the disaster that could soon turn into an unforgivable tragedy." Thank you.
I was going to wear my band trophy hunting t-shirt, but that was taken off me by the security. So although I don't have my t-shirt, I have my words. So here they are. I want to speak on behalf of all children everywhere. Black or white, it doesn't matter. We all bleed, love, and feel pain. I could be your daughter. I could be your niece. I could be your granddaughter. I could be you as a child. You were all children once. We children face a devastating future with the real possibility of it being empty of wildlife. Lions, tigers, elephants, rhinos, and hundreds of magnificent species are being wiped out by adults and the children they have groomed and brainwashed into thinking killing is fun. I am angry. Children all over the world are angry. Stop killing everything. Killing for fun defines the behavior of a psychopath. The police in every country now recognize cruelty and the killing of animals for fun as the same psychology involved in acts of violence to people and murder. When the police search for a murderer, the people profiled include all animal abusers, as both behaviours are inextricably linked by clear evidence across decades of convictions. Our animals are dying. Worldwide climate change devastation is happening. You are responsible for the speeding up of this process. Greed-based destruction of habitats, pollution and persecution have brought the world's wildlife to the brink of extinction. On top of that, we have trophy hunting, the cruelest display of ego, control, and inadequacy that a human can exhibit. Trophy hunting has decimated Africa's wild animals. Species go extinct every day. Remaining populations are fragmented, sick, and genetically weak. Your generation is responsible, and those before you. My generation is begging you to stop. We need you to fix this before it is too late. Please find it in your hearts and your moral code to stop the import of animal trophies. Please make a pledge to me today and all the children I speak for who are asking you to stop the killing of wild animals for fun. Please ban trophy hunting now.
Oh my goodness. That is what I call a call to action. And I think we've just had a big challenge, the gauntlet thrown down to all of us, and especially the speakers to follow, to up our game. Thank you, Cyril, and thank you especially, Elizabeth. So, next, and it's a slight change to the order that we had planned, I'm going to introduce a gentleman who's just been appointed the Shadow Environment Secretary. He's a Labour cooperative member for Plymouth, Sutton and Devonport, and spoke very eloquently on this issue. And please welcome Luke Pollard.
It's a good change of order, so no one important needs to follow what an amazing speech that was that we just heard. Just to underline just how important this is. It's not just a pursuit for some MPs, it is something that unites all of us. And there's lots in politics that we disagree on. But when I went into the room next door in the animal trophy hunting debate, Pauline's debate, which she ran, it was a moment where everyone came together. And those are few and far between in politics. But in the last Parliament, actually we had a fair few of them. Because the Brexit malaise and disruption meant that there was very little else that government could get through. So we made huge progress on animal welfare, banning wild animals in circuses, banning the trade in elephant ivory, making progress on trophy hunting. And what we need to make sure is that on a cross-party basis, we make sure that whichever government, whoever's in charge, doesn't forget the importance of recognising the beauty, the magnificence and the diversity in our wildlife. Making sure that whether it's in our fields or in our gardens in the UK, or whether it is around the world, that we're taking the time to recognise the magnificent diversity on our planet and the cruelty and inhumanity that we do to it. I think banning trophy hunting would send a very, very strong signal to the world that this is not an acceptable practice in the 21st century. And once we have done that, let's encourage our friends and allies to go further as well. Let's use that international pressure that we'll see building more and more as we get towards COP26 in November, where we're looking at global carbon, but let's also look at global biodiversity as well. Because I want to make sure that the world that we hand over to the younger generation and onwards is one that we can be truly proud of. That every single day species go extinct. Some of them we all recognise. Every single day insects, small animals, birds go extinct. So many that we can't name them every day. That is the challenge of what we've got to do, and that's why for everyone that wears a green stripy pass in this building here, who's a member of Parliament, we need to make sure that we're putting animals ahead of our party politics, to make sure that we are working together even though we may disagree on other things, because when we do that, we can be unstoppable. Thank you and keep up the good work.
Process that the government is acting on. He is, of course, Lord Goldsmith, the International Environment and Animal Welfare Minister.
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and particularly pleased that the event is being hosted by Tracy Crouch, who is one of Parliament's, one of Parliament's most active animal champions, and she's a great, great passionate hero of these issues. And I also want to pay tribute to the indefatigable, that's a gallery term, isn't it? I think it's sad I've been saying, the indefatigable campaigner here, Eduardo, who has visibly moved the dial on this issue, and I know that from having been on the other side of his lobbying for a very long time. I needed it for a very long time. I came in halfway through Sir Ranulph's speech, and as ever, he spoke beautiful words of truth. I'm slightly sad, I can't deny it, that Dr. Jane Goodall isn't here. I watched her Among Wild Chimpanzees. I probably watched it 50 times as a 9-year-old, and I fell madly in love with chimpanzees at that time, but also, I have to admit, with her. Slightly odd for a 9-year-old, but in my fantasy as a 9-year-old, I was definitely her Tarzan. So, trophy hunting is, trophy hunting may not be the world's greatest outrage against nature. God knows there are many, many of them. But when I look at those chilling images that often go wild and viral on social media and often find themselves on the front page of the Mirror, of celebrities or other people gloating over the corpses of beautiful endangered species, obviously I'm always shocked, as I guess everyone in this room is, but I'm also repulsed. And I don't believe that I'm in anything like a minority here in this country. Poll after poll, survey after survey, demonstrate that most people in this country, a country broadly speaking of animal lovers, share my views. So I was delighted last year when the government was finally able to announce that it was taking steps to end the import of so-called hunting trophies. And I was even more delighted when that appeared in even stronger language in the manifesto on which the government was elected just a couple of months ago. As you know, we're consulting on the issue now, and I encourage everyone here to take part. I know some of you already have. Eduardo has, and I know many others have as well. But if you have not yet taken part, you must. It is really important. It is important for all kinds of reasons that you take part. To make strong policy that cannot then be challenged, government needs to look at the evidence. And you here in this room are the people, many of the people, who will provide that evidence. So please do that. And as you know, not everyone shares your position. Not everyone shares the position that I've just outlined. There are people who believe that trophy hunting is an important source of funding for conservation. As far as I've seen, and I've made an effort to look, and I've had many discussions with people who take that view, it seems predicated mostly on the idea of best practice, that all trophy hunting is highly and well regulated, that the money makes it to local communities and to conservation, that the fees are ploughed back into conservation, and that the practice itself is based on sustainability. And if that were true, if that were genuinely true, then yes, we would have to weigh up the arguments, the moral arguments against the apparent conservation benefits. But is it? The purpose of this consultation is to unpick those arguments. How can it be good for an endangered species if the healthiest and most magnificent among them are the first to be shot? How can species benefit if the most endangered of species are the ones that are always targeted? What is the possible value of so-called canned hunting of lions, where lions are bred simply to be shot like fish in a bowl? And what's the risk of canned lion body parts finding their way alongside illegally caught, illegally poached lions in a trade which we know is taking that species to the very brink? And is trophy hunting cruel? We know that Cecil the lion took many, many, many hours to die, and that is not, I'm told, unusual. Finally, what does it say about us as a species that even now in the midst of what is undoubtedly a giant extinction event, that these animals are prized more when they're dead than when they are alive? So I want to be clear that this is not about dictating policy to African nations, something that has been raised a number of times. It's about taking responsibility here at home, and we have wonderful and growing partnerships with communities all over the continent of Africa based on the protection of animals and their environments. And we're going to ramp up those partnerships massively over the coming year. This has been described as a super year for nature, and I think we have to absolutely make sure that that's exactly what it is, because time is not on our side. In my lifetime, populations of animals have, on average, more than halved. Around 1 million species, we're told, are on the brink of extinction. Every minute last year, We lost the equivalent, depending on who science is correct, between 30 and 47 football pitches worth of forest every single minute, a trend that continues this year. Our oceans too, a third of the world's fisheries have either collapsed or they are on the brink of collapse. We're told that by 2050 they will contain more plastic than fish if measured by weight. Those much derided students who took to our streets are right. This is undoubtedly an emergency, and this will be a defining year. We have the opportunities. We've got the CBD in China on biodiversity. We've got the COP hosted here in Glasgow at the end of this year. We can do great things if we work hard between now and then at those events. Before I sign off, having added to this appalling gloom, I want to acknowledge that we have actually done a fair bit already, and I think it would be wrong not to acknowledge that. It was our negotiators, we've got one of them over in the corner who never takes the stage. Cheryl Case was here spying on me from DEFRA. She took responsibility. She and her team were responsible for winning the arguments in CITES in favour of a ban on the trade in wild caught elephants. She was working 24 hours a day round the clock in an unsung manner. I don't think she got the praise publicly, but this country, as a result of her and her team, did great things. We're tackling the pet primate trade here in the UK. We're in the process of doing that now. We're increasing sentences for extreme cruelty. We're ending the live export of animals for slaughter and fattening, and much, much more besides. Globally, we've doubled our climate funding to 11.6 billion over the next 5 years. And we've committed, crucially, to using that uplift largely to invest in nature as the best way of tackling climate change, while also tackling the biodiversity crisis, while also helping to alleviate and prevent poverty. We've seen a massive increase in the famous Darwin Initiative that many people here would have plugged into over time. It's trebled to £90 million over the next 3 years, and we've put tens of millions more into tackling the illegal wildlife trade. We're on track, I know I'm out of time, we're on track to protect an area of ocean the size of India around our overseas territories, and we're committed to expanding that. Not yet defined, but I can tell you as one of the ministers with responsibility in this area that there is almost no end to my ambition when it comes to the overseas territories and expansion of the Blue Belt. So we will do a lot this year. We've created a £100 million fund to invest in fragile, important landscapes, often transboundary landscapes like Southern Africa, actually all over the world, where we want to enable people to develop sustainable livelihoods on the back of healthy nature, where we want to create safe passage as well for threatened species, for example, elephants. Our manifesto commitment included a £640 million Nature for Climate Fund here in the UK. I think it's a first. It's the first that I'm aware of. And it means that not only are we going to be showing world leadership when it comes to tackling these gigantic issues, we're going to be able to invest a lot where it's needed here in the UK to tackle our own biodiversity crisis. And it is a crisis. We have seen a collapse in biodiversity in this country over the last few decades. Finally, we launched the 30 by 30 campaign, which which calls on countries to endorse our plan that 30% of the world's oceans should be protected by 2030. And we had 12 countries signed up yesterday morning, we got Sweden yesterday afternoon, and we've got many more lining up, flirting with this campaign. And I hope by the time we reach the COP, we will have many, many more countries beside. We've got so much more to do. I'm absolutely determined we should. I have many colleagues and allies and friends in government who share that commitment. We have an opportunity now, and I'm absolutely certain that we will do great things this year with your help. Finally, I want to thank you all for the work you do. You are heroes in this room. You've done extraordinary things. All the pressure that you apply leads to action here in Parliament, and it is much needed and much appreciated. Thank you.
One of South Africa's leading think tanks and is a consultant for the EMS Foundation and author of a new report published this week which says that a UK ban on trophy imports could help lift thousands of Africans out of poverty. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ross Harvey.
Honourable members, colleagues, guests, it is a great honour and privilege for me to be addressing you today as we urge the British government to ban trophy hunting imports into Great Britain. You need no reminding that 213 years ago, in these very chambers, William Wilberforce defeated the Atlantic slave trade. John Pollock, his biographer, writes the following: "The House rose almost to a man and turned towards Wilberforce in a burst of parliamentary cheers. A long defence of the trade and of slavery itself could not alter the mood of the House. That defence amounted to a willing deafness to the cries of real slaves, Wilberforce's enemies held that slavery was nasty but necessary. Such a defense sounds eerily similar to the defense of trophy hunting today. We are told that without the hunters' philanthropy, wild landscapes in Africa will revert to ecologically destructive livestock farming. Poverty-stricken local rural communities, we are told, will go without meat and jobs. Consider, however, a recent incident from my home country, Botswana. Imagine the cries of a young elephant bull at seeing his father shot down in front of him by trophy hunters near the Dobie border. The small elephant family is now deprived of the knowledge and instruction of its patriarch. The local community fears that the resultant trauma will make the elephants more aggressive towards people, inflaming human and elephant conflicts. It is also one less large-tusked bull that high-paying photographers will never get to see. My children, Caleb, age 6, and Anna, age 5, will most likely not see a large-tusked elephant in the wild. There are probably less than 40 left. Or consider the hunter who shot a collared bull in the same vicinity a few weeks later and tried to burn and bury the research collar. The local community was not consulted over the reintroduction of trophy hunting to its concession. Far from bringing conservation dollars to starving communities, hunting undermines their opportunities to participate in the sustainable ecotourism trade. These are not isolated incidents. They simply betray the underlying worldview that animates trophy hunting, a way of thinking that glorifies domination and ridicules stewardship. The idea that local communities in rural Africa desire trophy hunting, or that it is nasty but necessary for conservation, is fanciful propaganda. It ignores the fact that economic alternatives exist. It ignores the fact that those alternatives may create up to 11 times more jobs per hectare than trophy hunting. That's in South Africa alone. It ignores the fact that killing the biggest and best elephants or lions destroys genetic strength and ecological integrity, the very bedrock of future photographic non-consumptive tourism. It ignores the fact that trophy hunting is a fundamentally horrifying extractive activity that expropriates African animals' body parts to a trophy wall, normally on some Western rich home. Friends, trophy hunting is morally repugnant, even to those who reluctantly support it as nasty but necessary. Wilberforce had the courage to stand firm against such rationalizations. It is no coincidence that he was also instrumental in forming the first society for the prevention of cruelty to animals in this nation. He would have had in mind the words of Proverbs 12, "The righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel." It is now time for UK to heed Wilberforce's epic courage and ban trophy hunting imports as nasty and entirely unnecessary.
Latest book, Polar Bears and Humans, is the culmination of his encounters with over 500 polar bears. Ladies and gentlemen, Ule Leon.
Thank you very much. And as Eduardo said, I've been working last 4 years with a project called Polar Bears and Humans, collecting information about the status and the threats to polar bears. But a lot of the time it has been more investigation to get this information. I hired lawyers to force Canadian governments to release information because this has never been published before. So I will share a few facts about polar bear trophy hunting with you. And I think most of you know that polar bears have a problem with climate change. The ice is decreasing and the habitat is decreasing. Especially where I'm working in Svalbard, 52% of the ice is gone. But there are also other threats, mainly hunting. And last decades, between 800 and 1,000 polar bears are killed every year. In average, between 1963 to today, average 991 polar bears have been killed every year. And you never hear about this. And the population now is between 20 to 25,000 polar bears left in the Arctic, in the wild. If you look at this compared to Africa, if you look at the rhinos, between 2007 and 2016, about 6,115 rhinos were killed. If you look at the polar bears, 8,335 polar bears were killed in the same time, but nobody cares. With the rhinos, it's a big battle against poaching and with illegal activity, but in the Arctic, it's labeled as sustainable and subsistent hunting. And we have to do something about it before we lose it, and also climate change. And the main problem is the increasing demand. More people, more wealthy people want the luxury polar bear skins in their rooms. In Norway, it costs about $20,000 for a polar bear skin. In China, it's now up to $78,000. That's about the same price as 1 kilo of rhino horn or 2.5 kilos of cocaine. And this is a trigger for the illegal organizations who already have business in Africa. I'm afraid they will soon also start in the Arctic. If you're looking at the trophy hunting, it costs about $47,000 to do a trophy hunt. And you might think this is great news for the Inuit settlements. Sounds like big money. But only 52% in average is actually ending in the local settlements. And if you're looking at the statistics, between 1980 to 2009, 23 of 25 settlements in Inuit settlements were engaged in trophy hunting. But after 2009, only 8 are left. Why have 17 settlements quit this business if it's so important? There have been no white men pressure on this. They have decided they just leave the business. If you look at the 8 remaining settlements, only 3 of them have income more than 5% of the total income. So it's not important. Not many settlements are involved, and the income it's not very important. And another thing you most likely have heard is that the Inuit settlements, they don't have any options. They have to do it. But if you just look at the neighbor settlement in Alaska, it's called Kaktovik. With 300 people, there are 5 boat operators doing polar bear viewing for photographers and tourists. They have 2-month season, and there are 2 small hotels. And on these 2 months, they're earning $1.5 million, which is 70% more than all polar bear trophy hunting in the world. This small settlement you never heard about, and it's easy also in Canada to rather stop with the trophy hunting and give them a better way of earning their money. They can sell the same polar bear more than one time to more than one person. It's a huge opportunity. And I will end with the word conservation hunting. You heard this maybe as an argument for polar bear trophy hunting or trophy hunting at all. But the fact is that polar bears is the least suitable animal in the Arctic for trophy hunting. It's the least suitable. It's naturally rare. It has a very low cub survival rate, sometimes less than 50%. It also has a low reproduction rate, and it's also struggling with climate change. So there's no reason to claim it's conservation. And also, the trophy hunters are targeting the biggest, healthiest, and strongest animal. This is reverse selection. It's survival of the smallest, sickest, and the less fit animal. So we have to stop trophy hunting. We also have to stop commercial skin trade. That's the only way the polar bears have a chance in a warming future. Thank you.
It's absolutely astonishing, isn't it? Here we are, we think that polar bears are protected because of their vulnerable status, and yet laws, international and national, allow them to be killed just for fun. Well, our last speaker He's a familiar face, probably for more reasons than one. He's an author, a long-standing environmentalist, a former MEP as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Stanley Johnson.
Well, it's really nice to be here, also to pick up on Ross Harvey's image. I feel a bit like that, you know, that elephant, that old bull elephant, you know, white-haired. And I'd like to think that I've imparted, you know, some wisdom and, you know, environmental motivation in the Johnson plan. I don't know about that. Hard to say. But I will say that to me this is a very invigorating moment. You see, I spent 20 years, more than 20 years, more like 30 years, on the European Commission front, in the European Parliament front, and we were trying to drive through animal welfare legislation, environmental legislation, and if you like it, this was me in a sort of civil servant political mode. Well, that phase has passed. That phase has passed, apart from this coincidental link, you know, with the British government at the moment. You know, I'm in my first father role. But you know, that has no constitutional, nonetheless the commission which the government is about to establish, called the Constitution, Democracy and Rights Commission, decides it's going to give the first father some recognition. But why would that be? Why would that be? But I say I am humbled because when I was on the other side of the fence, if you like, on the governmental political side of the fence, I realized how absolutely vital it was to mobilize public opinion. I can remember once when I was working with, in the European Parliament, but I was working also with people like Joanne Lumley and Brigitte Bardot and so on and so forth, to try and get the European Parliament and the European Council to adopt the ban on the import into this country of, and into all the countries, of seal skins. Seals coming from the Canadian seal hunt. And I thought this here, basically, the NGOs made this happen. There was one moment when, in those days, the council was meeting in the Charlemagne building, and we got a huge demonstration. I was inside the commission, but I was getting the demonstration to come so that the ministers, including the commissioner, of course, would rise, and we got them all, and the ministers met on the 13th floor of the Charlemagne, and they got helium balloons, and the balloons flew up to the top floor, and all the balloons said, "Ministers, save us." And the point is this: politicians are really susceptible to influence and to people who raise the issues, and that's why Eduardo has done such a fantastic job here on this one. But I've got to say that if you take the Conservative Party manifesto as a whole, as presented and approved by the public, you have to say the public approved it, insofar as the public, you know, was familiar with the detail. Some people were, well, it's a really good set of proposals, not only on the animal welfare side, but on the environmental side. And it's wonderful that so soon after December the 12th, the glorious 12th, I was going to say, but that's not a good image. That's not a good image. In fact, I withdraw that. On December the 12th, you could say that the British people, you know, one way or another, gave their approval to a whole set of proposals on animal welfare and on the environment, and specifically, this proposal was in the thing, and I think that is absolutely fantastic. I was proud to be associated with that absolutely brilliant letter in the Times, which came out a few weeks ago, signed by 150 people. And if, by the way, some of you were defeated by the Times paywall, you know, it is a problem nowadays. Look at this. I'm going to read it. It's a 3-paragraph letter. I can tell you, killing animals for trophies is indefensible and cruel. We welcome the government's proposal to ban trophy imports and exports and urge it to implement a comprehensive ban as quickly as possible. and to work with other governments to end trophy hunting. The species targeted by trophy hunters are social, emotional, intelligent beings. Killing them to acquire personal memorabilia goes against civilized values. 2 more paragraphs. Trophy hunting has had devastating impacts on wildlife. Hunters aim for the biggest animals, resulting in artificial selection. The industry rewards those who have killed the most animals. Fees rarely benefit local communities. And finally, Britain can help close this chapter in our history. Trophy hunting has no place in the modern world. Policymakers should work with scientists, conservationists and communities to support economic development that preserves our natural heritage. I was proud to be one of the people who signed that, and it's wonderful to have really conservative. I'm not saying that people of Britain weren't important. I have, you know, what's the word, canvas with Zach, and of course he's held with huge respect in Richmond. But now, Zach, you're going to have more time, and if I might just, as it were, lobby you for half a second. Half a second, because you rightly said, and this letter also says, I mean, you yourself said so, it is vital that we work with other governments. Now, in the old days, of course, I'm not going to say the good old days, far be it from me to say the good old days, but in the good old days, you could actually have a jolly good idea in England. And when I say England, of course, I mean Wales and Northern Ireland and Scotland. I mean the United Kingdom. And you could rapidly get it into UCRED, and UCRED would get it into commission, and the MEPs would work hard, and you had a sort of framework. So now we really have to think very hard, how do we substitute now as we go forward? Maybe we have to make sure we have a jolly good office in Brussels, we don't have to call it UCRED any longer, who will realise that we will still need those 25, 26, 27 countries. Because if, for example, on the trophy hunting thing, we really move ahead with our legislation, then we are going to have, for example, to do something about CITES, and to do something about CITES means looking at the Commission's CITES regulation, and so on and so forth. So a huge, and take another one which has come up, I happened to read last night. Often I didn't have better things to do, I could watch television or something. I happened to read last night something called the CBD Zero Draft. Now, people have been talking, Zach himself mentioned the need to get to work on this climate change convention, that's one thing, but don't forget, even before the climate change convention, in October, in Kunming, we have the Convention on Biological Diversity. Now, everybody's been saying these two must go hand in hand, and I happen to have in my pocket a letter from the Chinese ambassador saying, please can we work together so that Kunming? Yes, Kunming leads into Beijing and so on, and leads into Glasgow. And actually, time is of the essence, because I looked at this document last night, and it said, comments on this document have to be in to the Secretariat by February the 24th. Well, that is very, very soon. And then you see that actually this wonderful document, which is about to be the output of the Kunming Convention in October, it is now being negotiated, doesn't say anything near enough about the links between climate change and nature protection. Nature protection being an absolute crucial thing. And it certainly doesn't say anything about the issues we're talking about today. So I'm just giving an example of how, as we go forward now, and let's assume we have got this one under our belt, as we go forward now, we have to say we really need to mobilize countries all the way around the world to do the same. And that also means taking the advantage, if there is anything to be said in Kunming, it means saying something there too. People have been saying very convincingly today that there is a real impact on biodiversity as a result of hunting. I've heard it, I'm terribly impressed. Well, that's something which the CBD ought to recognise. Do you see what I mean? And we have a time to put that sort of thing in. And of course it's not going to be as easy as it was, because we won't have the Commission to feed it into. We'll have to find other ways of doing it. Well, enough of that. This for me has been a wonderful moment. It's such a privilege to look around and see so many people from so many different organisations I've worked with over the years in so many different ways. And the one thing that I'm being totally unattached and totally freelance and totally, as it were, insignificant in a constitutional sense is that I can actually say yes to almost anything which people put up to me. And I do say yes, I do want to continue be able to say yes. And for example, there's Duncan McNabb, who now has another thing, and he's been talking to Zach about it, which is tremendously important, which is trying to stop British tourists going off to India and Thailand and Myanmar and helping the exploitation of the Asian elephant by participating in elephant rides and all that. So go to Jaipur, I've just been in Jaipur, and there's poor elephants, 12 hours a day they go up and down. Just unbelievable. Anyway, enough of that, we're here to talk about trophy hunting. Thank you very much, Eduardo. Wonderful job, thank you.
And a wonderful note to end on there. Thank you very much, Stanley, and indeed to all of our speakers and distinguished guests. A couple of very quick things. Members of Parliament, those of you still here, we do have EDM 50, the cross-party EDM here, for you to sign. Please do so if you're able to. We're on the brink of, I think, a historic moment. We can't let this moment slip through our fingers, though. Remember, the other side are fighting just as hard, if not harder. Last year, the trophy hunting industry succeeded in getting the quota for critically endangered black rhinos that could be trophy hunted doubled. They've got the number of black rhinos that can be legally trophy hunted doubled. So they're fighting very hard. We need to fight harder and smarter. Thank you again.